I've always believed the road teaches you things you can't learn anywhere else: patience, timing, courage, but nothing prepared me for the moment. A bruised boy stepped out of the darkness and whispered the words that froze my soul. "We can't go home." His voice cracked as he said it, trembling like the night itself was holding him together. "Tell me, what would you do if a child looked at you like you were the last safe place left in the world?" The cold hit me first, sharp enough to sting my lungs as I stepped out of my rig. Diesel fumes curled in the air behind me, warm against the freezing silence of the truck stop. The lot was empty, no engines rumbling, no footsteps echoing, just the neon sign flickering overhead like it was afraid of the dark too. And there, at the edge of my headlights, stood a thin boy with messy brown hair, one eye swollen, his lips split. His name, I'd later learn, was Evan Carter, but in that moment, he was just fear wearing a child's face. He kept glancing over his shoulder, eyes wide, scanning the shadows like something was hunting him. His backpack hung open, one strap torn, dirt smeared his cheek. His voice shook when he spoke again. "Please." I didn't know where else to go. That desperation, raw, fragile, clawed straight into my chest. I'd seen wrecks, fights, storms on the road, but there's a different kind of danger when a kid begs for help at 2 a.m. I knelt down slowly so I wouldn't scare him, gravel biting into my knees. "Hey," I said quietly, "my name's Cole. You're safe right now. What happened to you?" He hesitated, his breath puffing white in the cold, his fingers trembling around the frayed strap of his backpack. For a moment I thought he might run, but then his voice cracked into a whisper. "He hurt my mom, and he's looking for me." That hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I felt something shift inside me, something heavy, something determined. "Who's looking for you?" I asked. Evan swallowed hard, eyes filling with tears he tried not to let fall. "Dale," he whispered. "Dale Hoskins. He lives with us now. Mom tried to stop him. She couldn't." His voice shattered. He said if I left, he'd make sure we never saw daylight again. The wind scraped across the lot, cold and cruel. Evan's fear seeped into the air like smoke, and right then I knew, not from instinct but from the way the night felt tighter around us, that whoever he was running from wasn't far, that this wasn't just a boy needing help. This was a life and death moment dropped at my feet by fate, and I couldn't walk away, not tonight. The boy's voice kept echoing in my head as I stepped down from the cab and into the cold air. "We can't go home." Those 4 words felt heavier now, pressing against me like a truth he had carried alone for too long. The wind rattled the loose metal siding of the old fuel station, and the neon sign flickered weakly, casting broken patches of red light across the pavement. Owen walked beside me slowly, clutching his jacket tight around his thin shoulders, as if the night itself might try to tear him away again. I crouched down to meet his eyes. "Owen, tell me what happened," I said softly. He looked past me, toward the shadows stretching behind the pumps as if expecting someone to step out. His breath hitched. "He hurt her," he whispered. "He hurt my mom, and he said next time, he'll come for me." His voice cracked under the weight of it. Not fear alone, something deeper. A child forced to grow up too fast. Before I could speak, the sound of an engine hummed faintly in the distance, far, but approaching. Owen flinched instantly, eyes wide, searching the dark. I placed a hand on his shoulder to steady him. "It's okay," I murmured. "You're safe with me." But the way he stared into the night told me he didn't believe safety existed anymore. Not for him, not for his mother, not after what they had endured. We walked toward the rear of my truck, where the shadows felt thicker but somehow safer than the open pavement. Owen kept close, barely a foot away, every movement jittery and on edge. I could see bruises on his cheek more clearly now, dark under the neon's glow. He noticed me looking and lowered his head. "He said not to tell anyone," he whispered. "He said bad things happen when I talk." His voice trembled so hard the words nearly disappeared. I knelt beside him again, letting my voice drop low and steady. "Owen," I said, "whatever he told you, he lied. You're allowed to be safe. You're allowed to be helped." His eyes flicked up at me, a storm of doubt and hope colliding behind them. "But Mom," he breathed. "If he hurt her again, it's my fault. I ran." My throat tightened. That kind of guilt doesn't come from a child's mistake. It comes from a monster's manipulation. Then, from across the lot, a car door slammed, sharp, echoing, wrong. Owen froze completely, breath stopping midair. Slowly, he lifted his eyes toward the darkness, and his voice came out as a broken whisper that chilled me to my core. "That's him." The boy, Evan, sat curled in the passenger seat, his small hands gripping the edge of the seat like he was trying to anchor himself to something that wouldn't disappear. His breathing was shallow, uneven, as if every inhale carried the risk of breaking inside him. I didn't start the engine yet. I needed him to feel the cab wasn't another trap, wasn't another place where someone would control him. Just a pause, a breath, a moment of safety he hadn't known in a long time. His eyes darted toward the windshield, toward the vast darkness outside, watching every shadow as if one of them might stand up and take shape. The neon sign flickered through the glass, painting the interior with pulses of blue and white that made him flinch each time. "Evan," I said softly, "you're safe right now. No one's getting to you in here." He didn't look at me, but his grip loosened just enough to show he'd heard. Not trust, just a small crack in the fear. The cold from outside seeped in through the vents, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and diesel, the familiar perfume of every lonely highway night. Evan's gaze dropped to his knees, and he swallowed hard. "We can't go home," he whispered again, the words trembling as they surfaced. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was confession, truth, a truth that cost him so much strength he nearly folded under it. I nodded slowly, waiting, giving him space to shape whatever came next. Kids don't say something like that unless the home they're talking about isn't a home at all. The cab was silent except for the faint ticking of the cooling engine and the distant hum of the highway. Then, with a voice so small it barely reached me, he said he'd kill us if we ever tried to leave. The weight of those words settled into the cab like a storm cloud, thick and suffocating. I leaned forward, elbows resting on the wheel, grounding myself before I asked, "Who is he, Evan?" For a moment he didn't answer. His eyes filled with water he refused to let fall. His lips trembled as he finally whispered, "My mom's boyfriend. His name is Clay." The way he said it, like the name itself, carried scars. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, breathing hard, trying not to lose control. "He hurt her tonight," Evan said, voice cracking, "and when I tried to help her, he hurt me too." His fingers pulled back his sleeve to show a deep purple bruise blooming across his wrist. And that's when something sharp and cold settled in my chest. Clay wasn't just violent. He was hunting them. And Evan hadn't just run to my truck. He'd run out of time. The silence inside the cab felt heavier after Ryan stopped talking, as if the air had absorbed every broken piece of the truth he'd been carrying alone. The headlights of my truck cut a narrow path through the darkness beyond the windshield, illuminating the drifting fog like ghosts moving across the highway. Ryan kept wiping his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, trying to hide the shaking he couldn't control. I didn't rush him. Sometimes a kid needs quiet more than words. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes weren't just scared. There was something else behind them. Exhaustion. Defeat. A boy who had learned far too young what survival feels like. "Mr. Dale," he whispered, "he's probably already looking for us. He gets mad fast." The way he said it wasn't dramatic. It was simple, factual, like someone stating the shape of a scar they've lived with for years. I leaned back in my seat, feeling the familiar burn of cold anger crawl beneath my ribs. Outside, the wind picked up, tapping against the cab like fingers testing the walls of a cage. I glanced at the mirror, half expecting a shadow to emerge from the darkness at the edge of the lot. "You're safe right now," I said, keeping my voice steady, grounding. "He can't touch you while you're here." Ryan looked at me with an expression that made my chest tighten, like safety was something he couldn't picture anymore, even when it was right in front of him. A distant metallic rattle echoed from somewhere behind the pumps. Ryan flinched so hard he curled in on himself. "That's him," he whispered. "He always kicks something before he grabs me." I felt the temperature drop a few degrees, not because of the weather, but because of the way trauma can turn ordinary sounds into weapons. I reached for the interior light switch and flicked it off, drowning us in darkness except for the soft glow of the dashboard. "Stay low," I murmured. Ryan slid down in the seat, pressing his back against the door, breath trembling in shallow bursts. The night outside seemed to stretch closer, leaning into the truck as if listening. I cracked the window just enough to hear better. The cold rushed in, carrying the faint scent of gasoline, wet asphalt, and something else. The subtle hum of danger approaching, quiet but certain. Then I saw it, a shape moving near the abandoned ice machine, too slow to be the wind, too deliberate to be coincidence. A man stepped into the faint wash of my headlights, shoulders broad, posture rigid with purpose. His steps were heavy, controlled, the kind of walk that says he's done this before. Ryan's breath hitched into a silent sob. "That's him," he whispered again, voice cracking into fear so sharp it felt like glass. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, watching the man close the distance with a predator's calm. He wasn't running. He didn't need to. He believed the boy still belonged to him, and men who think that way don't fear the dark. They feed on it. The diner door swung shut behind us, leaving the warm light trembling against the glass as we stepped back into the cold. The night felt heavier now, like every shadow had shifted closer while we were inside. Ethan clung to the sleeve of my jacket, not tightly, but in that way a scared kid reaches for something solid without even knowing he's doing it. His steps were small, hesitant, as if the darkness itself might pull him back toward the place he'd escaped from. A gust of wind rushed down the parking lot, carrying the scent of diesel fumes and something else. Fear, old and stale, but lingering like a warning. I scanned the empty stretch between the diner and my truck, and a tension crawled up the back of my neck. Nothing moved, but danger doesn't always announce itself with footsteps. Sometimes it waits, sometimes it watches. Ethan stopped walking, staring past my trailer toward the far side of the lot. His breathing hitched. "That's where he took her," he whispered. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped in front of him, blocking his view. His eyes were filled with the kind of dread that comes from memory, not imagination. "You're not going back there," I said gently. "Not tonight. Not ever again." But he pointed past me, his hand trembling, barely able to lift. "I heard them arguing. Yesterday," he said. "Mom said she needed help. He said she belonged to him. I tried to run, but he caught me. That's when he stopped, swallowing pain that words couldn't hold." A metallic clink echoed from behind the dumpsters near the old propane tanks. Sharp, deliberate. Ethan gasped and stepped back until he hit the side of my truck. His voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "That's him. That's exactly the sound he makes before he comes out." I placed a hand on the truck's cold metal, grounding myself as much as him. My heartbeat slowed, not out of calm but out of focus, the kind of stillness that comes when instinct has no room for doubt. Another sound followed, a slow scrape, like a heavy boot dragging across gravel, the kind of step a man takes when he wants his presence to be felt long before he's seen. Ethan pressed his palms to his ears and shook his head, eyes squeezed shut. "I told you," he whispered. "He knows where we are." I moved closer to the edge of the trailer, keeping Ethan shielded behind me. The fog rolled low along the pavement, glowing faintly under the dim yellow lights, turning every shadow into a threat. And then a silhouette emerged from behind the dumpsters. Broad shoulders, heavy coat, slow stride, every movement dripping with intent. Not rushing, not hiding, just coming. Ethan's breath shattered into fragments. "It's him," he whispered. "Mr. Hale. He found us." The man lifted his head just enough for the light to catch the edge of his face, and when his eyes locked onto mine, cold and certain, I knew one thing without doubt. This night was about to change all of us forever. When I pushed the diner door open again, the cold slapped me hard enough to steal my breath. The lot behind my truck felt wrong, quieter than before, like the night itself had taken a step back and was waiting for something terrible to happen. My boots hit the pavement fast, crunching through bits of gravel as I moved toward the rear of my trailer, and then my stomach dropped. Evan wasn't there. The space between the wheels was empty. Only a single smear of dust showed where he had been sitting moments ago. A soft engine rumble echoed from the far end of the lot, barely visible through the fog that clung low across the ground. My heart pounded as I followed the sound, every step heavier than the last. Then I saw him, Evan, being dragged toward an old rusted blue SUV by a man with a death grip on his arm. Reed Carson. Even from a distance I recognized the kind of rage twisting his face. The kind of rage that comes from a man who believes everyone in his life exists to obey him. Evan wasn't fighting anymore. His legs barely moved, scraping against the pavement as Reed yanked him closer to the open passenger door. The boy's voice cracked into the cold air, small and broken. "Please, don't." Those two words nearly split my chest open. He'd run out of strength hours ago. He didn't have anything left to give except fear. I moved faster, my breath fogging in sharp bursts. "Let him go." My voice boomed through the empty lot like a warning shot. Reed froze mid-step, twisting his head toward me with the kind of snarl men wear when they've been caught doing something they know they shouldn't. He tightened his grip on Evan's arm, pulling him closer. "Back off," he barked, his voice slurred with fury and desperation. "This is my business, not yours." Evan lifted his head just enough to see me, his eyes filled with something I recognized instantly, hope mixed with terror. He wasn't just looking at me, he was begging me not to disappear. I stepped closer, each footfall steady, controlled. The headlights of Reed's SUV lit my silhouette, letting him see exactly who was coming for him. "You're not taking him anywhere," I said, my voice low and cold. "Not tonight." Reed stared at me, pupils shrinking as he realized I wasn't bluffing, and as that realization sank in, his right hand slipped inside his coat. Not slow, not hesitant, but fast. Too fast. The kind of movement that meant danger was about to explode into the night. The cold air slapped my face the moment I stepped out of the cab again, and for a second, the world felt too quiet, too still, the kind of stillness that means danger is close, watching, waiting. I scanned the edge of the lot, and that's when I saw him emerging from the darkness. A man built like a shadow, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of someone who believed the world belonged to him. His boots dragged through the gravel with lazy authority. and even from a distance, I could feel the arrogance rolling off him. Noah stopped breathing beside me. His small hand tightened around the fabric of my jacket the way a drowning person clings to the last piece of driftwood. "That's him," he whispered, voice thin, shaking. "Please, we need to hide." The words weren't just fear, they were instinct, the survival reflex of a child who had learned how monsters walk. His knees trembled so hard I could feel it through my sleeve, but he didn't run. He stayed right beside me, that kind of courage from someone that broken. It hit harder than any punch. The man kept coming, the weak orange glow of the street lamp illuminating his face piece by piece, a scratch-covered jaw, a bruised cheekbone, eyes full of entitlement and rage. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't searching blindly. He was walking straight toward my truck, toward Noah, like he had followed a trail no one else could see. "Noah!" he barked, voice sharp enough to peel paint off metal. "Get over here, now!" Noah flinched so violently I had to steady him by the shoulder. He didn't answer. He didn't move, but the terror in his eyes said enough. The man stepped closer, hands clenched, breath fogging the cold air like smoke from something burning inside him. "You think you can hide from me behind a stranger?" he growled. "You think anyone here is going to help you?" I stepped between them before he could get any closer, boots planted firmly in the gravel, my shadow covering Noah entirely. The man's steps slowed as he finally noticed me, really noticed me. His lip curled upward, twisted with disgust and mock amusement. "Move," he ordered. "This isn't your business." I didn't move, not an inch. My heartbeat stayed slow, controlled, steady, the kind of calm that comes only when the line between right and wrong is so clear it lights the entire night. I took a breath, letting my voice fall into a deep, grounded tone that carried through the cold. "The boy said he can't go home," I told him, "and he's not going anywhere with you tonight." The man stopped, not because he respected the warning, because he didn't understand it. He tilted his head, like a predator analyzing prey it had never seen before. Behind me, Noah pressed closer, his breath trembling against my back, and for the first time since the boy approached my truck I felt something shift in the air. This wasn't going to end with words. The moment we stepped out of the cab, the cold sliced across my face like a warning, and I instantly knew something was wrong. The truck stop wasn't silent. It was too silent. Even the wind felt like it had paused to listen. I tightened my grip on Evan's shoulder as he scanned the darkness, his breath stuttering with every exhale. The neon sign flickered weakly overhead, as if it were struggling to stay alive under the weight of the night. And then Evan pointed, just one trembling finger, toward the far edge of the lot. "There," he whispered. "That's his truck." A faded red pickup sat crooked between two dead streetlights, engine rumbling just loud enough to sound like a growl. The driver's door hung open, the interior flooded by a dim yellow dome light that illuminated a mess of fast food wrappers and empty bottles. But it wasn't the truck that made my pulse hit my throat. It was the man standing behind it, a shape formed from darkness, shoulders hunched forward, head turned slightly as if listening for footsteps he already knew were coming. Evan stiffened like every nightmare he'd had was suddenly breathing the same air we were. I stepped in front of him, shielding him with my body. The gravel crunched beneath my boots with each careful step, and the man slowly shifted, bringing his face into the weak glow of the dome light. His eyes were sharp, cold, predatory, the kind of eyes that didn't just look at you, they sized you. He tilted his head, almost curious. "You shouldn't have brought him outside," he said calmly, like he already owned the night. "He knows he's supposed to come home." Evan's voice cracked behind me. "I'm not going with you." The words were small, fragile, but they carried a courage that made the man's expression tighten, not with fear, but with offense. He took a slow step forward, boots scraping the gravel, and his hands curled into fists like he was rehearsing what he planned to do once he got close enough. "You think this driver is going to save you?" he asked. His voice dipped into something dark. "He won't be the first man I've put down." I took another step, closing the distance, ready for whatever he thought he had planned. The cold air filled my lungs like fuel, and every instinct I'd earned over decades on the road clicked into place one by one. "He's not going anywhere with you," I said, my voice low and steady. "Not now, not ever again." For a moment, the world held its breath. No engines, no voices, just three people standing in the dim glow of a dying neon sign, one broken, one determined, and one about to learn that fear doesn't control every story. The man smiled then, a slow, wide, twisted smile that didn't reach his eyes, and as the shadows tightened around us, he whispered, "You don't know what he's done." The moment the police cruiser pulled away, taking Marcus's stepfather into a future he could no longer control, the truck stop fell into a silence so heavy it almost felt sacred. Marcus sat on the edge of my passenger seat, wrapped in the thick sheriff's department blanket, staring out the window like the world finally stopped chasing him. His breathing was slow, uneven, the sound of a boy trying to remember how to exist without fear. I leaned my head back against the seat, letting the hum of the engine warm the cab, knowing the night wasn't done with either of us yet. He turned to me eventually, eyes swollen from tears that had been held back too long. "Do you think my mom knew I was trying to help her?" he whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. I looked at him, at the bruises on his cheek, at the hope trembling under the question. I didn't sugarcoat anything. Kids like him deserve truth, not fairy tales. "Yes," I said. "She knew you were fighting for her. That's why she tried to protect you, even if she couldn't say it." His eyes closed, his jaw trembling, and he turned his face away just long enough to hide the first tear that escaped. Outside the windshield, the fog drifted across the lot in long, ghost-like ribbons, twisting under the glow of the overhead lights. Marcus watched it, shoulders rising and falling with slow breaths, as if he were seeing the night for the first time without a hand around his throat. "What happens now?" he asked softly. The question wasn't about paperwork or police stations. It was the question every hurt kid carries. What happens when the fear finally stops? What fills the silence afterward? I rested my hand on the steering wheel, staring ahead. "Now," I said quietly, "you heal, and you don't do it alone." He nodded, but the sadness in his eyes didn't fade. Grief never leaves instantly. It lingers, reshaping itself into something quieter, something that settles deep in the bones. "I didn't think anyone would stop," he whispered. "When I ran onto the road, I thought maybe it was stupid. Maybe no one would care." I turned toward him, meeting his gaze firmly. "Marcus, running wasn't stupid. It was brave, and you weren't invisible. Not tonight. Not to me." His lips parted in a small, fragile breath, as if those words loosened a knot he'd been carrying since childhood. He looked down at his hands, rubbing the blanket fabric between his fingers. "He always said no one would believe me," he murmured, "that no one would ever listen." I leaned forward slightly, speaking low and steady. "Men like him say that because they're terrified someone will listen, terrified someone will see the truth they've been hiding." Marcus swallowed hard, eyes glistening again. "But you listened," he whispered. "You actually listened." And for the first time all night, his voice held something new, something delicate, but alive. Relief. I shifted the truck into gear, the rumble vibrating through the floor as I pulled slowly out of the lot. Marcus watched the building fade in the side mirror, his expression a mix of fear, heartbreak, and something that looked like freedom. The road opened ahead of us, long and dark, but no longer suffocating. "Where are we going?" he asked. I glanced at him and gave the only answer that mattered. "Someplace safe," I said, "and as far away from the past as this truck can carry you." Marcus leaned back, closing his tired eyes, and as the highway swallowed the night behind us, I realized the truth. Saving him didn't end here. It began here. The patrol cars disappeared down the highway, their lights fading into the early morning haze until nothing was left but the long shadow of my rig. The silence that followed wasn't the same one I'd found earlier that night. This one felt lighter, as if the world had finally unclenched its fist. I leaned against my truck's door, letting the cold seep into my bones while my thoughts drifted toward Ethan and Mia, finally safe in the warmth of those police cars. Kids like them shouldn't have to know what it means to run through the dark. But the world isn't built to be fair. Sometimes it takes a stranger to remind it what justice looks like. When I climbed back into the cab, the seat still held the faint warmth from Ethan's shaking body. His blanket remained folded in the corner, carrying the scent of fear and something else, trust. I rested my hands on the wheel for a long moment, staring at the empty road stretching ahead like a story waiting to be told. Nights like this carve marks inside a man. They leave memories you don't shake off easily. But some memories, some are worth carrying, because they remind you that even on the loneliest roads you're not just passing through. Sometimes you're put exactly where you're needed. As I pulled onto the highway, the first thin streaks of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with bruised shades of blue and gold. The humming of the engine settled into a steady rhythm that calmed the ache in my chest. I thought of Ethan's last words to me. "Thank you for stopping." Words so small, yet so heavy. Stopping should be simple, but too many people don't. Too many drivers see shadows on the roadside and choose to look away. Tonight proved why you can't, why you shouldn't, why a trucker with tired eyes and calloused hands can still change the outcome of someone else's story. Miles rolled beneath my wheels, each one carrying me farther from that truck stop, but deeper into the truth the road had carved into me long ago. Courage isn't loud. It isn't heroic. It's choosing to act when it would be easier to keep driving. It's answering the quiet knock of a desperate child. It's standing between danger and someone who can't stand alone. It's the simple decision to open your door, and once you've done it, You never forget the faces of the ones who needed you most. If you stayed with me through this story, then you understand why voices like Ethan's matter, why kids who whisper we can't go home need someone to listen before it's too late. So if this meant something to you, if it stirred something in your chest, leave a like. It helps stories like this reach people who might need them more than you know. And subscribe because the road is long and there are more nights ahead, more lives crossing into my headlights, more choices waiting in the darkness. Climb in, sit with me. There are more miles to go, and I don't intend to drive them alone.